Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he finished cleaning the last table in his small restaurant. The blue plate was not much to look at, but it was his. Located on the lower deck of New Geneva Station, it served decent food to dock workers, traders, and anyone else who wanted a hot meal without paying fancy prices. It was past midnight, and the station's artificial day cycle had dimmed the lights in the corridors. Jake gathered the day's trash bags and headed toward the disposal units at the end of the deck. The walk always made him feel tired, but taking out garbage was part of running a restaurant. As he approached the waste area, he heard a strange sound. It was soft, like someone trying not to make noise. Jake stopped and listened. There it was again, a rustling sound coming from behind the large disposal containers. Jake set down his trash bags and walked closer. "Hello?" he called out. "Someone there?" The rustling stopped completely. Jake felt his heart beat faster. The lower decks were usually safe, but strange things could happen at night. He took another step forward and looked around the corner of a disposal unit. What he saw made him freeze. A small figure was hunched over an open trash bag, pulling out scraps of food with 4 thin arms. The creature had blue skin that seemed to glow slightly in the dim light. When it heard Jake's footsteps, it looked up with large golden eyes that seemed too big for its thin face. Jake realized he was looking at a HFY. He had heard about them on the news feeds. Their planet had been conquered by the Hegemony Alliance 6 months ago. Many had become refugees, scattered across the galaxy with nowhere to go. The alien girl, she looked young, maybe 16 in human years, stared at Jake with fear in her huge eyes. She held a piece of moldy bread in one of her hands and trembled, like a scared animal. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and Jake could see how thin she was. Her 4 arms looked like sticks, and her ribs showed through her shirt. "Please," the girl whispered in broken human language. "Not hurt me, only hungry." Jake felt his heart sink. This child was starving. She was digging through garbage just to find something to eat. He looked at the scraps around her. Old vegetable peels, spoiled meat, things he would not feed to a dog. "Hey," Jake said softly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Jake." The girl did not move, but her golden eyes watched every move Jake made. "What's your name?" Jake asked. "Zira," she said quietly. "Are you hungry, Zira?" She nodded quickly, then seemed to realize she had admitted weakness. On her homeworld, HFY were known as proud warriors. Admitting hunger probably felt shameful to her. Jake made a decision that would change both their lives. "Come with me," he said. "I have food. Real food." Zira's eyes went wide. "You give food to me?" "Yes." "Come on." Jake turned and walked back toward his restaurant. After a moment, he heard soft footsteps following him. Zira stayed several feet behind, ready to run if this was some kind of trap. Jake opened the restaurant door and turned on the lights. The warm glow filled the small dining room with its dozen tables and simple decorations. To Jake, it was just his workplace, but Zira gasped when she saw it. "So many tables," she whispered. "So much food place." Jake smiled. His little restaurant did look impressive compared to digging through garbage. "Sit down," he said, pointing to a chair at the counter. "I'll make you something to eat." Zira climbed onto the chair carefully, using all 4 arms to balance herself. She had never sat on human furniture before. Jake went into the kitchen and started cooking. He decided to make something simple but filling. Jake heated oil in a pan and added onions, then ground beef. The smell filled the restaurant, and he heard Zira make a small sound of surprise. Her people probably ate simple foods, nothing with complex smells like this. Jake added tomatoes, herbs, and spices to make a thick sauce. Then he cooked pasta and mixed it all together. The smell got stronger and richer. When Jake looked through the kitchen window, he saw Zira staring with amazement. Her big golden eyes followed every move he made. When the food was ready, Jake brought a large plate to the counter. Steam rose from the pasta, and the red sauce gleamed under the lights. He set it in front of Zira along with a fork. "Eat," Jake said simply. Zira looked at the fork with confusion. On her world, people ate with their hands or simple tools. Jake showed her how to hold the fork and twist it to pick up the pasta. Zira took her first bite and her expression changed completely. Her golden eyes went wide and she made a small sound of joy. She had never tasted anything like this. The meat was rich and savory, the tomatoes were sweet and tangy, and the herbs added flavors she could not even name. She ate quickly, using her forearms to steady the plate and guide food to her mouth. Jake watched with satisfaction as color returned to her blue cheeks. When the plate was empty, Zira looked up at him with wonder. "Is magic?" she asked. Jake laughed. "No, just cooking. Good cooking. My people eat." Zira struggled for words. "Eat same thing always. Gray paste. For strength. But this," she touched her stomach. "This make inside feel warm. Happy." Jake felt something tighten in his chest. This girl had lived her whole life eating bland paste for nutrition. She had never experienced the joy of a good meal, the comfort food could bring, the way cooking could be an act of love. "Are you still hungry?" Jake asked. Zira nodded shyly. Jake went back to the kitchen and made eggs, toast, and fried potatoes. He brought the plate out and watched Zira discover new tastes and textures. Each bite seemed to amaze her. As she ate, Jake thought about what to do next. This girl was alone, starving, and had nowhere to go. The station did not welcome aliens, especially refugees. Most humans saw the HFY as dangerous enemies even though the war was over. But Jake could not let her go back to eating garbage, not after seeing the joy on her face when she tasted real food. "Zira," he said carefully, "do you have anywhere to stay?" She shook her head sadly. "Do you want to work? I need help in my restaurant." Zira's 4 hands stopped moving. She stared at Jake like he had offered her the galaxy. "You want me work for you?" "Yes, I can give you food, a place to sleep, and a small wage, but you have to work hard." Zira slid off the chair and did something that surprised Jake. She got down on her knees and pressed her forehead to the floor, a HFY gesture of deep gratitude. "I work very hard," she promised. "I do anything. You save my life." Jake felt uncomfortable with her bowing. "Get up, Zira. We're going to be partners, not master and servant." As Zira stood, Jake realized he was taking a big risk. Hiring refugees was illegal without expensive permits. But looking at this starving girl, he knew he could not turn her away. "Welcome to the blue plate," Jake said, extending his hand. Zira looked at his hand with confusion, then carefully shook it with one of her 4 hands. Her skin felt cool and smooth, and her grip was surprisingly strong. Neither of them knew it yet. But this handshake would change everything. 3 weeks had passed since Jake found Zira digging through the garbage. The small room above his restaurant had become her home, and she worked harder than any employee Jake had ever had. Zira's 4 arms made her incredibly fast at washing dishes. She could clean plates, scrub pots, and organize utensils all at the same time. Her large golden eyes could spot dirt or stains that Jake would miss completely, and her nose was so sensitive that she could smell when food was going bad before Jake even knew there was a problem. "Jake," Zira said one morning, holding up a container of milk. "This smell wrong. Not good." Jake took the container and checked the date. It was still 3 days before expiration, but when he smelled it, he realized Zira was right. The milk was starting to turn sour. "How did you know that?" Jake asked. "HFY knows very good," Zira explained. "On homeworld, bad food make people sick. So we learn smell everything." This was exactly the kind of help Jake needed. Food safety was crucial in a restaurant, and Zira's abilities were like having a built-in quality control system. Lisa Park, Jake's waitress and longtime friend, had been suspicious of Zira at first. Lisa was a practical woman in her 40s who had worked at the Blue Plate for 5 years. She knew how much trouble hiring an alien refugee could cause. "Jake, you're taking a huge risk," Lisa had warned him during Zira's first week. "What if someone reports us to station security?" But even Lisa had to admit that Zira was an amazing worker. The kitchen had never been so clean, and they had not served a single spoiled ingredient since Zira started checking everything. More importantly, Zira was eager to learn about human culture. She asked questions about everything. Why humans decorated their food with colors, why they used so many different spices, why they ate different foods at different times of day. On Keith High World, Zira told Jake one afternoon as she watched him prepare lunch, "We eat nutrition paste 3 times per day. Same paste always. For strength." "That sounds boring," Jake said, chopping vegetables for a stew. "Not boring. Efficient." But Zira paused. "But this?" She gestured at the colorful vegetables. "This make eyes happy, make nose happy. Why humans do this?" Jake thought for a moment. "Because eating should be more than just fuel for your body, it should be enjoyable. Food brings people together, makes them happy, helps them remember good times." Zira's golden eyes widened. "Food for happiness, not just for strength?" "Both," Jake said. "Good food makes you strong and happy." This concept seemed revolutionary to Zira. She began watching Jake cook with intense focus, studying every step like she was learning the secrets of the universe. During quiet moments between meal rushes, Zira would ask Jake to explain what he was doing and why. She learned about seasoning, about how heat changed the texture and flavor of ingredients, about timing and presentation. "Why you put green things on top?" she asked one day, watching Jake sprinkle herbs on a finished dish. "Parsley. It adds fresh flavor and makes the food look prettier." "Food must look pretty?" "It helps people enjoy eating more. We eat with our eyes first." Zira absorbed every lesson. She began to understand that human cooking was not just about nutrition. It was an art form, a way to show care for others, a bridge between people. But their peaceful routine was disrupted when Dan Cooper, a station security officer, started asking questions. Dan was not a bad person, but he followed rules strictly and worried about anything that seemed unusual. "Jake," Dan said one evening as the dinner rush was ending, "some people are saying you hired an alien girl. You know that requires special permits, right?" Jake felt his stomach tighten. "She's just helping out occasionally, nothing official." Dan looked around the restaurant. "Where is she now?" "Cleaning in the kitchen," Jake said honestly. Dan walked toward the kitchen door, and Jake followed nervously. They found Zira washing a huge stack of pots and pans, her forearms working in perfect coordination. She looked up when they entered, and her golden eyes immediately showed fear. "Hello?" Dan said carefully. "What's your name?" "Zira," she whispered, not stopping her work. "Are you working here?" Zira looked at Jake, confused and scared. Jake realized she did not understand the legal complications of her situation. "I help Jake," Zira said simply. "He give me food. I clean for him." Dan frowned. "Jake, you know hiring alien workers requires permits from the Galactic Labor Authority. Those permits cost a lot of money and take months to get approved." "I'm aware of that," Jake said. "If you're caught employing her illegally, you could face heavy fines. She could be deported to a processing center." Jake felt anger rise in his chest. Processing centers were basically prison camps where refugees were kept in terrible conditions while bureaucrats decided their fate. Many people died there waiting for decisions that never came. She was starving, Dan. I couldn't just let her die. Dan's expression softened slightly. "I understand, but the law is the law. I have to file a report." After Dan left, Zira sat quietly in her small room above the restaurant. Jake brought her dinner, but she barely touched it. "I make trouble for you," she said sadly. "No, you don't make trouble. The system makes trouble." "What happened to me?" Jake sat down across from her. "I don't know, but we'll figure something out." "I go to processing center?" Jake saw the fear in her golden eyes. "Not if I can help it." That night Jake could not sleep. He had known this day would come eventually. Hiring Zira without permits was illegal, and someone was bound to notice, but he could not regret his decision. In 3 weeks, Zira had become not just an employee but almost like family. The next morning, Jake discovered something that changed everything. He arrived at the restaurant early to find Zira already in the kitchen preparing vegetables for the day's soup. But she was not just cutting them. She was arranging them in beautiful patterns, combining colors and shapes in ways Jake had never thought of. "Zira, what are you doing?" She looked up nervously. Sorry. I watch you cook many times. I want to try." Jake looked at her work more closely. The vegetables were cut perfectly with precise, even pieces. The combinations of colors were artistic and appealing. Even more impressive, the smell was incredible. "Did you season these?" Zira nodded. "I smell your spices many times. I learn which ones go together." Jake tasted one of the vegetable pieces. The flavor was complex and delicious. Familiar spices, combined in a way he had never tried before. It was like tasting his own cooking but improved with new ideas. "Zira, this is amazing. How did you know to combine these flavors?" "On HFY World we have many plants, different tastes. I remember them and I think maybe they work with human spices too." Jake stared at her. Zira was not just a hard worker with good senses. She had natural talent for cooking, and she was teaching herself by observation and experimentation. Her alien background actually gave her advantages. She knew flavor combinations that no human chef would think to try. "Would you like to learn more about cooking?" Jake asked. Zira's golden eyes lit up with joy. "Yes, very much." As Jake began, teaching Zira basic cooking techniques, he realized that her legal problems might also be their solution. Zira was not just an ordinary refugee looking for work. She was a potential chef with unique abilities and knowledge. Maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to save her. The busy Friday evening rush was in full swing at the Blue Plate when disaster struck. Jake was in the kitchen preparing 3 different orders when his communication device beeped. Lisa's voice came through, sounding stressed and sick. "Jake, I'm sorry, but I can't come in tonight. I think I have food poisoning from that seafood place on Deck 7. I can barely stand up." Jake felt panic rise in his chest. The restaurant was packed with customers and more people kept arriving. Friday nights were always their busiest time, and he could not handle both cooking and serving alone. "Zira," Jake called out. "I need your help." Zira appeared in the kitchen doorway, her forearms still dripping with soap and water from washing dishes. "What you need?" "Lisa is sick. I need you to help serve customers." Zira's golden eyes went wide with fear. "I not know how serve people. I only wash dishes. I'll teach you quickly. It's not hard. You just take orders, bring food, and clear tables. But customers..." Zira looked toward the dining room where human voices were getting louder and more impatient. "They not like aliens serve them food." Jake looked at the tickets piling up on his order board. He had no choice. Some won't like it, but others will be fine. And right now they want their food more than they care who brings it. Jake quickly showed Zira how to use the ordering tablet and explained the table numbers. Her quick mind absorbed the information easily, but she still looked terrified. "I mess up," she said quietly. "You won't mess up. And if you do, we'll fix it. Just be polite and work hard like you always do." Zira took a deep breath and picked up her first tray of food. Jake watched through the kitchen window as she entered the dining room. Her forearms allowed her to carry 6 plates at once, something that amazed the customers even before they noticed she was an alien. The first table she served was a group of dock workers who came to the Blue Plate every week. When they saw Zira approaching with their food, they stopped talking and stared. "Well, I'll be," one of them said. Jake hired himself an alien. Zira carefully set their plates in front of them, her hands shaking slightly. "Enjoy your meal," she said in her soft, accented voice. "Thank you, miss," the oldest dock worker replied politely. The others followed his lead and thanked her as well. Zira's confidence grew with each table. Her forearms made her incredibly efficient. She could clear dirty dishes, refill water glasses, and deliver new orders all in one trip. Her enhanced hearing meant she never missed when someone called for service, even from across the noisy dining room. By the middle of the evening rush, something unexpected was happening. Customers were starting to compliment Zira's service. She was faster and more attentive than any human waitress could be, and her polite, grateful manner made people feel good about being served. Captain Roy Stevens, a freighter pilot who occasionally ate at the Blue Plate, arrived late in the evening when the crowd was thinning out. Roy was a large, friendly man who had traveled to dozens of worlds and met many different alien species. "Jake's got himself some interesting help," Roy commented, as Zira took his order. During slow moments, Jake had been teaching Zira about different human foods. She had become fascinated by the variety of ingredients and cooking methods. Sometimes, when there were no customers, she would experiment with small portions of food, trying combinations that occurred to her. That night, while Jake was focused on a complex order, Zira decided to try something new. She had been studying the spices Jake used and thinking about the plants from her homeworld. There was a HFY seasoning blend her grandmother had taught her about. It was made from dried flowers that grew only on their planet's northern continent. Zira had managed to trade for some of these dried flowers from another refugee a few days ago. She had been saving them, not sure how to use them with human food. But tonight, looking at the grilled chicken Jake was preparing for Captain Stevens, she had an idea. She quickly mixed the HFY flower powder with human herbs she had seen Jake use: rosemary, thyme, and garlic. The combination created a smell unlike anything she had experienced before. It was floral but earthy, familiar but completely new. Without thinking about what she was doing, Zira sprinkled her mixture on Captain Stevens's chicken before Jake could stop her. "Zira, what did you just put on that?" Zira realized her mistake and looked terrified. Sorry, I not think. I just want to make taste good." Jake looked at the chicken. It did smell incredible, unlike anything he had ever cooked before, but he could not serve experimental food to a customer without warning them. "Captain Stevens will have to know what you added," Jake said. When Zira delivered the plate to Captain Stevens, she was trembling with nervousness. "Sir, sorry. I add special spice to chicken. From my home world. If you not want, I get new chicken." Captain Stevens looked at the golden brown chicken, which smelled absolutely amazing. "What kind of spice?" "Dried flowers from HFY. My grandmother teach me. Very safe, very good for health." Roy Stevens was an adventurous eater who had tried food from many worlds. "Well, let's see what HFY grandmother cooking tastes like." He cut a piece of chicken and took a bite. His expression immediately changed. His eyes went wide and he chewed slowly as if trying to understand what he was tasting. "Holy stars," he whispered. "What is this?" "You not like?" Zira asked fearfully. "Not like? Girl, this is the most incredible thing I've ever eaten." Captain Stevens took another bite, then another. "The flavor is... I can't even describe it. It's like nothing I've tasted on 50 different worlds." Other customers began turning to look as Captain Stevens continued praising the chicken. Word spread quickly through the small restaurant that the alien girl had created something extraordinary. "Could I get some of that special chicken?" asked a woman at the next table. "Me too," called another customer. Jake found himself in an unexpected situation. Zira had accidentally created a dish that was causing excitement throughout the restaurant. But they only had a small amount of the HFY spice. "How much of that flower powder do you have?" Jake asked Zira quietly. "Very little. Is very hard to find. Can you make the mixture again?" Zira nodded eagerly. "Yes, I remember exactly." For the rest of the evening, Jake and Zira worked together to create small portions of the new dish for interested customers. Each person who tried it had the same reaction: amazement at flavors they had never experienced before. Captain Stevens stayed late, talking with other customers about the incredible food. "I've eaten at expensive restaurants on core worlds that couldn't make anything half as good as this," he told them. As the last customers left, Jake and Zira cleaned up the restaurant together. Jake was exhausted but also excited about what had happened. "Zira, do you understand what you did tonight?" She looked confused. "I serve food to people? You created something completely new. Nobody in human space has ever tasted food like that. You combined your culture with ours and made something better than either one alone." Zira's golden eyes shone with pride and happiness. "I do good? You did amazing." But Jake also felt worried. Tonight had brought them attention, exactly the kind of attention that could get them in trouble with the authorities. Several customers had asked questions about Zira, and word would spread around the station about the alien chef making incredible food. Jake realized they were at a turning point. They could try to hide and stay small, hoping the authorities would ignore them, or they could embrace what Zira had discovered and see where it led. Looking at Zira's hopeful face, Jake made his decision. Tomorrow, we start planning a real menu, featuring your cooking. Zira threw her forearms around Jake in a grateful hug. Neither of them noticed Dan Cooper standing outside the restaurant window, watching them with a serious expression on his face. The next morning would bring new challenges, but tonight had proven something important. Zira was not just a refugee looking for work. She was a talented chef with the ability to create food that no one else in the galaxy could make. The question was whether that would be enough to save her when the authorities came calling. The morning after Zira's breakthrough with the special chicken dish, Jake arrived at the Blue Plate to find 3 official-looking people waiting outside his restaurant. He recognized Dan Cooper in his security uniform, but the other 2 were strangers wearing the formal clothes of government officials. Jake Martinez, the woman in the expensive suit, said as he approached. "I'm Inspector Helen Barnes from the Galactic Labor Authority. This is my assistant, Tom White. We need to discuss your employment practices." Jake's heart sank. This was what he had been dreading since the day he hired Zira. "What can I help you with?" "We have reports that you're employing an alien refugee without proper work permits. This is a serious violation of station regulations and galactic labor laws." Jake unlocked the restaurant door, trying to stay calm. "Come in. We can discuss this inside." As they entered the restaurant, Zira appeared from the kitchen. She had been preparing ingredients for the day's cooking, but when she saw the officials, her golden eyes filled with fear. "Is this the alien in question?" Inspector Barnes asked. "My name is Zira," she said quietly, standing straighter despite her fear. "Zira, you're working in this restaurant without proper documentation. Do you understand that this is illegal?" Zira looked at Jake desperately. "I work hard. I clean good. I not make trouble." "That's not the issue," Inspector Barnes said, though her voice was not unkind. "The issue is following proper legal procedures." Tom White was taking notes on a tablet. "Mr. Martinez, employing undocumented workers can result in fines up to 50,000 credits and possible imprisonment. The alien will need to be transferred to Processing Center 7 for deportation hearings." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "She was starving when I found her. Was I supposed to let her die while waiting for bureaucrats to process paperwork?" "We understand your humanitarian concerns," Inspector Barnes said, "but laws exist for good reasons. What good reason requires sending a teenage girl to a prison camp?" Before the inspector could answer, the restaurant door opened. Captain Stevens walked in, followed by Lisa Park and 3 dock workers who were regular customers. They looked surprised to see the officials, but quickly understood what was happening. "Excuse me," Captain Stevens said politely, "but we're here for breakfast. Is the restaurant open?" Inspector Barnes looked annoyed. "We're conducting official business here." "Then conduct it," said one of the dock workers, a man named Pete who had eaten Zira's special chicken the night before. "We'll just sit quietly and wait for our food." More people began arriving. Word had spread quickly around the station about Zira's amazing cooking, and customers who normally ate elsewhere were coming to try her food. Within 20 minutes, the restaurant was full of people waiting to be served. "This is highly irregular," Inspector Barnes said. Captain Stevens stood up. "Inspector, may I say something about this situation?" "This is not a public hearing, Captain." "No, but this is a public restaurant, and we're all witnesses to what's really going on here." Captain Stevens looked around at the other customers. "How many of you tried Zira's cooking last night?" Half the people in the restaurant raised their hands. "And how was it?" "Best meal I've had in 20 years, called out Pete. "Incredible," said another customer. "Like nothing I've ever tasted." Captain Stevens turned back to Inspector Barnes. "This young lady isn't just an illegal worker looking for any job. She's a chef with unique skills that could benefit this entire station. Inspector Barnes frowned. Even if that's true, the law still applies. That's when Admiral Kate Morrison walked through the door. Admiral Morrison was the station commander, a tough woman in her 60s who had earned her position through decades of military service. Everyone in the restaurant immediately stood up, straighter when they saw her uniform. Inspector Barnes, the Admiral said calmly, I received your report about this situation. Before you proceed, I'd like to understand exactly what we're dealing with here. Admiral, we have a clear case of illegal alien employment. The law requires immediate deportation to a processing center. Admiral Morrison looked at Zira, who was trembling with fear but trying to stand bravely. Young lady, what's your name? Zira, ma'am. Captain Stevens sent me a message this morning about your cooking. He claims you've created dishes that combine human and HFY culinary traditions in ways no one has attempted before. Is that accurate? Zira nodded nervously. I learned from Jake how to cook human way, but I remember foods from my world too. I try to put them together. Show me. For the next hour, Zira worked in the kitchen while Admiral Morrison, Inspector Barnes, and the crowd of customers watched. Zira prepared several dishes, explaining her process as she worked. She started with a simple human vegetable soup, but added herbs from her homeworld that brought out flavors Jake had never tasted before. Then she made bread using human techniques, but incorporating HFY grains that created a texture and nutritional content superior to regular bread. Her masterpiece was a fusion dish that combined human meat preparation with HFY seasoning methods. The result was protein that was not only delicious but packed with nutrients that could help prevent several diseases common among space travelers. Admiral Morrison tasted each dish carefully. Her expression remained neutral, but Jake could see surprise in her eyes. This is remarkable, she said finally. Inspector Barnes, I'm going to ask you to hold your deportation order pending further review. Admiral, with respect, the law doesn't make exceptions for good cooking. No, but it does make exceptions for individuals who possess unique skills that benefit galactic commerce and cultural exchange. Admiral Morrison turned to Zira. Young lady, how much do you know about nutrition and food safety across different species? Zira's golden eyes lit up. Very much. On HFY World, I study with food preparers. We learn about many different plants, animals, safe cooking for different people. Could you prepare meals that would be safe and nutritious for multiple alien species? Yes. I know which foods make different people sick, which ones make them strong. Admiral Morrison looked around the restaurant. This station is becoming a major hub for interspecies trade. We need specialists who understand the dietary requirements and preferences of different cultures. Currently, we import expensive prepared foods for visiting aliens because our human chefs don't know how to cook for them safely. She turned back to Inspector Barnes. I'm declaring Zira a cultural exchange specialist under Section 15 of the Refugee Integration Act. This gives her special status and work authorization pending a formal hearing. Inspector Barnes looked uncomfortable. Admiral, this is highly unusual. These are unusual circumstances. Captain Stevens, I understand you travel frequently between systems? Yes, ma'am. I have regular routes to a dozen different worlds. Would you be willing to help establish supply chains for exotic ingredients that could support expanded interspecies dining options on this station? Captain Stevens grinned. Absolutely. There are traders on every world who would love access to new markets. Over the next 2 hours, Admiral Morrison organized what became an impromptu planning session. Customers shared ideas about expanding the Blue Plates menu. Captain Stevens discussed ingredient sourcing, and Zira demonstrated more of her cooking techniques. Lisa Park, who had arrived sick but stayed to support Zira, was amazed by the transformation. Jake, I think we're about to become famous. Jake was overwhelmed by the support from their community. People who barely knew Zira were volunteering to help expand the restaurant, testify at her hearing, or spread word about her unique abilities. Why are you all doing this? He asked Captain Stevens. The big pilot smiled. Because she's not just cooking food, Jake. She's building bridges. Every dish she makes brings human and HFY cultures closer together. In 30 years of space travel, I've never seen anything like it. By the end of the day, Zira had official temporary work status, a date for a formal hearing, and more support than Jake had dared to hope for. But more importantly, she had something she had lost when her world was conquered, a sense of purpose and belonging. "Jake," Zira said as they cleaned up that evening, "I think maybe losing my homeworld brought me to where I supposed to be." Jake smiled. Maybe it did. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today had proven that sometimes the right person in the right place could change everything. And sometimes a community would stand together to protect something worth saving. 6 months after the hearing that granted Zira permanent work status, the blue plate had transformed into something Jake never could have imagined. The small restaurant that once served simple meals to dock workers had become the most famous dining establishment on New Geneva Station. The morning rush was busier than ever, but now it included customers from a dozen different alien species. Zira moved through the expanded dining room with graceful efficiency, her forearms carrying plates designed for beings with very different dietary needs. At table 5, a group of crystalline Veltar were enjoying a mineral soup that would poison most carbon-based life forms. At table 8, furry Makari traders shared a meat dish so spicy it would hospitalize a human. And at the counter, 3 human freighter pilots ate Zira's famous fusion breakfast that combined the best of both cultures. "Good morning, Ambassador," Zira called out cheerfully as Chen Liu entered the restaurant. Ambassador Liu had become a regular customer after the station's first successful interspecies trade conference, which had been catered entirely by the Blue Plate. The food had been so impressive that several alien delegates had requested Zira's recipes to take back to their homeworlds. "Morning, Zira, the usual, please." Coming right up, Zira disappeared into the kitchen where Jake was training 2 new cooks, both human refugees from a mining colony that had been abandoned by its corporate owners. Jake had discovered that helping others who had lost their homes felt natural after his experience with Zira. "Remember," Jake was telling the new cooks, "when you're preparing food for the Garen delegation, their stomachs can't handle any acid stronger than what's found in mild citrus. Always test the pH levels." "Got it," said Maria, one of the new cooks. "And the Kethai refugees prefer everything served at exactly body temperature?" "Right. Their mouths are much more sensitive to heat than ours." Zira smiled as she prepared Ambassador Liu's order. Teaching humans to cook for different alien species had become one of her favorite activities. Every successful dish felt like building a bridge between cultures. The expansion of the Blue Plate had required moving to a larger space on the station's main commercial deck. The new restaurant had room for 60 customers and a kitchen equipped with specialized equipment for preparing food for various species. Admiral Morrison had helped secure the funding through grants designed to promote interspecies cooperation. Captain Stevens had kept his promise about establishing supply chains. His trading network now brought exotic ingredients from 30 different worlds directly to New Geneva Station. Other restaurants had tried to copy Zira's fusion cooking, but none of them had her unique knowledge of alien dietary requirements and her natural talent for combining flavors. "Jake," Lisa called from the dining room, "we have a special guest." Jake looked through the kitchen window to see a familiar figure, another Kethai, this one much older than Zira. The elderly alien wore the traditional robes of a Kethai elder and carried herself with dignity despite her obvious poverty. Zira saw the elder and immediately dropped what she was doing. She rushed into the dining room and performed the deep bow of respect that Jake had seen only once before, the night he first offered her a job. The elder spoke to Zira in their native language, her voice carrying authority and warmth. Zira responded, gesturing toward Jake in the kitchen. Other customers watched curiously as the conversation continued. Finally, Zira led the elder to a quiet table and returned to the kitchen with tears in her golden eyes. "Jake, that is Elder Zahria. She was my grandmother's teacher on the homeworld. I thought she was dead." "What did she say to you?" "She heard about what I do here. She traveled 3 systems to find me." Zira wiped her eyes with one of her hands. "She say I honor our people by sharing our food traditions. She say I keep Kethai culture alive in new way." Jake felt emotion tighten in his throat. "That's wonderful, Zira." "She also say something," else. There are many HFY refugees in processing centers. They have no hope, no purpose. She asked if... Zira hesitated. She asked if maybe I teach them to cook like I do. Give them way to survive with honor instead of just surviving. Jake looked at his friend, because that's what Zira had become despite their different species. In 6 months, she had grown from a starving refugee into a confident young woman who carried herself with pride. More importantly, she had found a way to honor her lost culture while embracing her new home. "What do you think?" Jake asked. "I think yes, but his big thing would need more space, more equipment, and processing centers not easy places to work. Let's talk to Admiral Morrison. If anyone can make it happen, she can." 3 days later, Jake, Zira, and Elder Saharia met with Admiral Morrison in her office. The station commander listened carefully as Zira explained her proposal for a refugee culinary training program. "The idea is sound," Admiral Morrison said finally. "We're already seeing increased trade revenue from restaurants trying to serve alien customers. Having properly trained chefs would support that growth. More than that," Elder Saharia said in careful human language, "it'd give our people purpose, pride, not just surviving, but contributing." Admiral Morrison nodded. "I can authorize a pilot program at Processing Center 7. If it works there, we can expand to other facilities." Within a month, Zira was spending 3 days a week at the processing center, teaching refugee HFY how to combine their traditional knowledge with human cooking techniques. The program was challenging. Many of the refugees were traumatized and hopeless, reluctant to learn skills that seemed pointless in their confined situation. But gradually, success stories began to emerge. Refugees who completed Zira's training were being hired by restaurants across the system. Some even started their own food businesses, creating economic opportunities for themselves and their families. Jake often accompanied Zira to the processing center, helping with the more complex technical aspects of food safety and kitchen management. He watched with pride as his former dishwasher became a teacher and mentor to dozens of refugees. "You know what this really is?" Captain Stevens said one evening, as he enjoyed dinner at the expanded blue plate. "It's hope. You're giving people hope." Jake looked around the bustling restaurant. Human families sat next to alien traders, sharing meals and conversations across species barriers that had seemed impossible to cross just months earlier. The kitchen buzzed with activity as human and HFY cooks worked together to create dishes that neither culture could have imagined alone. At the center of it all was Zira, moving between kitchen and dining room with the confidence of someone who had found her place in the universe. Her forearms carried plates of food that represented something more than nutrition. They carried the message that different cultures could not only coexist, but create something beautiful together. That evening, after the last customers had gone, and the restaurant was clean, Jake and Zira sat at the counter sharing a late dinner. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Jake asked. Zira considered the question carefully. "I miss my family. I miss my home world. But I not miss being hungry, being afraid, being alone." She gestured around the restaurant. "This place, these people, you give me new family, new purpose. You gave us something too, you know." "What I give?" Jake smiled. "You showed us that being different isn't a weakness, that helping someone who's different from us makes us stronger, not weaker. You proved that the best things happen when people work together, instead of staying separate." Zira's golden eyes shone with contentment. "Jake, when you first find me eating garbage, did you know all this would happen?" "No. I just knew you were hungry and I had food." "Sometimes small kindness grow into big changes." Jake nodded. "Sometimes it does." Outside the restaurant windows, New Geneva Station hummed with life. Ships from dozens of worlds docked and departed, carrying news of the small restaurant where humans and aliens worked together to create something neither could achieve alone. In the months that followed, the model pioneered at the blue plate would spread to other stations and worlds. Refugee training programs would expand beyond cooking to include dozens of other skills. Cultural exchange initiatives would become standard practice in human space, but it all started with a simple decision by a human chef who couldn't let someone starve. and an alien girl who refused to give up hope. As they finished their meal and prepared to close the restaurant for the night, Zira looked at Jake with gratitude that had never faded despite all their success. "Thank you, Jake, for everything. Thank you too, Zira, for showing me what humans can be when we're at our best." Together they turned off the lights and locked the door of the blue plate. Tomorrow would bring new customers, new challenges, and new opportunities to prove that compassion and cooperation could overcome any barrier. And in a small room above, the restaurant elder Saharia smiled as she prepared lesson plans for the next group of refugee students, knowing that the future held hope for all of them.